It started with a simple act of kindness. In a quiet corner of a bustling diner, a waitress bent down to help a child struggling to eat her meal. She thought nothing of it, just doing what anyone with a heart would do. But what she didn't know was that this small moment of compassion was being watched. And that moment would lead to something darker, something she could never have imagined. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon in the middle of October. One of those days where the sky just hangs low, gray and heavy with unshed tears. The streets of Lakeview were slick with water, leaves pasted to the sidewalks, and the air carried that damp chill that seeps through clothes and bones alike. Inside Gracie's diner, the bell above the door chimed lazily each time someone came in, bringing with them the cold scent of wet pavement and distant car exhaust. Emily Hayes had worked at Gracie's for nearly 6 years. She was used to the rhythm of slow shifts and small tips. She had a calm face, the kind that didn't beg for attention, framed by chestnut hair always tied back in a neat braid. She was known around the neighborhood as reliable, sweet, quiet, never the center of anything but always steady. That afternoon, as she wiped down tables and refilled lukewarm coffee for truckers and retirees, her eyes caught on something. Someone different. A woman had entered the diner with a child, no older than 6 or 7, bundled in a light pink coat too thin for the weather. The woman wore sunglasses despite the gray sky outside, her posture stiff, her expression unreadable. She led the child by the hand, gently guiding her to a booth by the window. Emily noticed the way the little girl reached out with her hands to feel the edge of the table before sitting down. Her eyes didn't focus on anything around her. That's when Emily realized the girl was blind. Emily walked over, notebook in hand, offering her usual warm smile. "Hi there. What can I get you too?" The woman barely looked up. Her voice was curt. "She'll have pancakes. I'll have tea. That's all." The little girl said nothing. She sat silently, her small fingers tracing circles on the tabletop. Emily nodded and turned away, but something about the child stuck with her. Not just the blindness, something else. A kind of quiet alertness, like a creature that had learned not to speak unless spoken to. 10 minutes later, Emily returned with a plate of pancakes and a cup of steaming tea. The woman barely acknowledged her, speaking quietly into her phone as she scrolled. The little girl was trying to navigate her food, tapping gently with her fork, missing the plate entirely. Emily hesitated. The girl looked frustrated. Her lips trembled, but she didn't complain. Emily couldn't just walk away. She knelt beside the booth, gently guiding the girl's hand. "Here, sweetie," she said softly. "Let me help. The pancakes are here, see? If you start at 12 o'clock and cut down, you'll get a nice bite." The girl turned her face toward Emily's voice, as if seeing her with her ears. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was paper-thin. Emily smiled. "My name's Emily. What's yours?" The woman's voice cut sharply from across the booth. "We don't need help." Emily flinched. "I'm sorry, The woman stood abruptly, taking the girl's hand. "We're leaving." She dropped a $10 bill on the table and tugged the child to her feet. The little girl looked back over her shoulder, blindly, in Emily's direction. "Thank you for helping me," she said again. Emily stood frozen, watching them disappear into the rain, a strange unease twisting in her chest. The next morning, Emily returned to work like usual, trying to shake the encounter. But it stayed with her, the child's too thin coat, the way she didn't speak unless spoken to, the way the woman had snapped not with annoyance but with fear, not the kind of fear you show in public, the kind that comes from hiding something. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the streets turned gold and wet, Emily heard the chime of the door again. But this time the woman wasn't with the child. Only the girl stood in the entryway, shivering, soaked to the bone, and alone. Emily rushed toward the door, her heart thudding. The little girl stood in the diner's entryway, trembling, her shoes soaked through, hair dripping rainwater onto the black and white tiles. Her small hands were clenched at her sides, her face pale. "Sweetheart," Emily said gently, kneeling down. "Are you alone?" The girl nodded slowly. Her pale blue eyes, though blind, seemed to be looking through Emily. "Where's your mom?" The girl's lips quivered, but she didn't answer. Emily looked around. The street outside was empty, just puddles and the quiet hiss of rain falling on concrete. The bell above the door jingled again as it closed behind them. "Come here, let's get you warm." Emily guided her gently toward the counter, wrapping a clean dish towel around her small shoulders. "What's your name?" she asked again. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Sophie." Emily smiled, trying to mask her growing concern. "That's a beautiful name. Sophie, can you tell me what happened?" Sophie lowered her head. "She left. She told me to wait, but she didn't come back." Emily glanced at the clock. 6:45 p.m. The sun was nearly gone, the outside world growing dimmer by the minute. Whoever that woman was, she'd abandoned this child. Emily felt a wave of disbelief, followed closely by anger. She crouched to Sophie's level again. "Would it be okay if you stayed with me tonight? Just until we figure out what to do?" Sophie nodded slowly. "You're kind," she said softly. Emily called the local police to report a found child, but the dispatcher told her no missing children had been reported matching Sophie's description. They advised Emily to wait and see if the mother returned, promising to send a social worker the next day if no one claimed her. Emily couldn't help feeling suspicious. No mother simply walks away from her blind daughter, especially in the rain. That night, Emily brought Sophie home to her small apartment above a florist shop on Elm Street. The place was modest, a couch, a tiny kitchen, and a second bedroom she mostly used for storage. She cleared it out as best she could and made up a small bed with extra blankets. As she tucked Sophie in, the little girl asked, "Do you live alone?" Emily nodded. "Yeah, just me." Sophie tilted her head. "Not anymore." Emily smiled, trying to hide the way that comment unsettled her. "Not tonight, at least." Around midnight, Emily woke to the sound of soft footsteps. She sat up in bed, blinking in the darkness. The floor creaked faintly outside her bedroom door. "Sophie?" she called. No answer. Emily got up and padded into the hallway. The light from the street lamp outside cast long shadows through the blinds. The door to Sophie's room was slightly ajar. Inside, the bed was empty. She found Sophie standing in the living room, facing the window. Her small frame was silhouetted against the glass. "Sophie," Emily said softly, "are you okay?" Sophie didn't turn around. Her voice was faint. "He's looking for me." Emily's skin prickled. "Who is?" Sophie finally turned, her face unreadable in the dim light. "The man in the dark." Emily knelt down. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "He comes when I sleep, but not always in dreams." Emily frowned. "Did someone hurt you, Sophie?" Sophie didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Emily's face with trembling fingers. "You're safe," she said. "But you won't be if you keep me." A chill ran through Emily's body. The next morning, Emily tried to press Sophie for more details, but the girl had shut down, polite but distant. She didn't mention the man in the dark again. She simply ate her cereal slowly, carefully, as though she were waiting for something. At 10 a.m., Emily received a knock at the door. A woman in a tan coat introduced herself as Miss Cartwright, a caseworker from Child Protective Services. She was here to collect Sophie. Emily's chest tightened. "That was fast," she muttered. "I didn't think anyone would come for another day." Miss Cartwright gave a rehearsed smile. "We make exceptions for at-risk children." She crouched to Sophie's level. "Hi there. You must be Sophie." Sophie didn't speak. She held tightly to Emily's hand. Emily frowned. Something about Miss Cartwright didn't sit right with her. Her tone was too clipped, her ID badge generic. She hadn't even asked many questions. She hadn't filled out a single form. "I'd like to see some credentials," Emily said. Miss Cartwright's smile faltered slightly. "I assure you." "Let me call the department first," Emily said, reaching for her phone. But Miss Cartwright stepped forward, quickly. "There's no need." At that moment, Sophie spoke. Her voice was cold. "Hollow. She's not who she says she is. Everything froze. Emily's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. A call from an unknown number. On instinct, she answered. "Is this Emily Hayes?" A voice asked. "This is Officer Mark Evans from the Lakeview PD. We got a tip that someone may come to claim a child under false pretenses. You're harboring a girl named Sophie?" Emily's heart jumped into her throat. "Yes, she's with me. Do not hand her over to anyone. We're sending an officer now. Stall them. Keep the child safe." Emily looked up. Miss Cartwright was staring at her, unmoving. Then, without a word, the woman turned and walked out the door. Sophie clung to Emily's side. "I told you," she whispered. "He's still looking for me." The knock came again, this time louder. Emily froze, still holding the phone. Officer Evans on the line. "Don't open it," he warned. "Backup is en route. 5 minutes out." Emily peered through the peephole. Nobody. She backed away slowly. Behind her, Sophie sat cross-legged on the couch, facing the front door with eerie calm. She clutched a ragged teddy bear Emily hadn't seen before. Its button eyes gleamed faintly in the dim apartment light, and one of its seams looked freshly stitched, as though it had just been sewn shut. "Where did you get that bear?" Emily asked, her voice hushed. Sophie didn't respond at first. Then, "He leaves it behind. Every time he comes." Emily blinked. "He? The man in the dark?" Sophie nodded once. There was another knock, this time at the back door. Emily's breath caught in her throat. That door opened onto the alley behind the building, a place almost no one knew existed unless they lived there. How could anyone? She turned off the lights. Sophie didn't flinch in the dark. She simply sat, silent. Emily crouched beside her. "Sophie, I need you to tell me what's going on. Please." For a moment, Sophie's lip trembled. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and pointed to the teddy bear. "He follows children like me," she whispered. "But only the ones who see without their eyes." Emily shivered. "You mean, the blind?" "No," Sophie said softly. "The cursed." Years ago, there had been rumors around Lakeview. Whispers in hushed tones of children who vanished and returned, different. Some came back mute, others violent, and some didn't come back at all. Local papers dismissed them as urban myths. But every once in a while, stories would resurface, always with the same phrase. "He watches in the dark." Emily had dismissed them as nonsense until now. The officer arrived minutes later, pounding at the door and calling her name. She flung it open, her breath catching at the sight of his uniform and badge. Officer Evans. Young, tall, with the strained expression of someone who didn't sleep much, stepped inside and closed the door quickly. "You weren't kidding," he said, nodding at Sophie. "The department's been chasing leads about her for weeks. People trying to claim her. Government agencies we can't trace. We think someone or something is targeting her." Emily's blood ran cold. "Why?" He knelt before Sophie. "Sophie, do you remember a place called Hollow Creek?" Sophie's entire body stiffened. The air in the room seemed to tighten. "No," she whispered, but Emily could see it in her face. She was lying. Evans sat back. "That's where she was found 6 months ago. Alone. In the woods. The woman who brought her to the diner? She's not her mother. She's a handler. Probably paid to watch her." "Watch her for who?" Emily asked. Evans shook his head. "We don't know. But everyone who's tried to take her disappears." Emily felt her skin crawl. "Disappears how?" "No bodies. No messages. Just gone. Off the grid. We traced one last signal. A hospital intern who tried to report Sophie's case to child services. Then nothing. Signal dead. Apartment cleared out." Sophie hugged the bear tightly. Her voice was barely a breath. "They're not gone. They're with him." Later that night, after Officer Evans ran background checks and reinforced the apartment's doors with a temporary bar lock, he gave Emily his personal number and a warning. "Don't let her out of your sight." Emily didn't sleep. She sat beside Sophie's bed, watching her breathe. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, for a child supposedly being hunted by a malevolent entity. Around 3:12 a.m., the room temperature dropped. Not gradually, but like a sudden drop into ice water. Emily could see her breath. Then, Sophie sat up, eyes closed, still asleep. She turned her head slowly toward the closet and whispered, "He's here." The closet door creaked. Emily's heart stopped. The bear in Sophie's arms began to twitch, just slightly. Its stitched seam pulsed as though something inside it shifted. Emily grabbed Sophie and ran from the room. Behind her, the closet door burst open. Not outward, but inward, as if something from inside had pulled it. They didn't return to the apartment after that night. The next morning, Officer Evans took them to a safe house on the outskirts of Lakeview, tucked away behind a string of overgrown trees and a rusted gate. It had once been a ranger station, now used for emergency witnesses and off-the-books protection cases. It was there Emily learned the truth, or at least a part of it. Evans brought a sealed case file, thick, yellowed, marked, "Confidential, Case 481C." Subject: Sophia Drexler. The photo on the file showed Sophie, only it was taken nearly 10 years ago. "That's not possible," Emily said. "She's only 6 or 7. Evans nodded grimly. "Exactly. This photo is from 2015. Emily flipped through the file. It detailed a remote adoption agency. No records, no parents. Just a girl found wandering near Hollow Creek, claiming to have no memory. "She's been appearing like this every few years," Evans said. "Same age, same name, different towns. Always blind, always with that bear. She doesn't age." Emily stared at the child, who now sat on the porch steps humming softly to herself, her face toward the woods. "She's not a child," Emily whispered. "No," Evans said. "She's something else." The wind howled against the windows of the ranger station, carrying with it the deep groan of shifting trees and something else. Something like whispers buried in the rustle of branches. Emily stood at the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes on Sophie. The girl sat quietly on the wooden porch, unmoved by the chill, humming a melody too old for a child. A lullaby, Emily realized, though it carried a note of sorrow deeper than its simplicity should have allowed. "She's remembering," Evans said behind her, approaching with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Remembering what?" Emily asked, barely above a whisper. He handed her a mug. "Everything." Later that day, Evans showed Emily a map of Hollow Creek, the location repeatedly linked to Sophie's unexplained appearances. Nestled deep in the Black Hollow Forest, an area considered cursed by locals, Hollow Creek had once been home to a small religious sect known for its secretive rituals and strange disappearances in the early 1900s. "The Order of Sightless Mercy," Evans said, pointing to a faded photo of hooded figures gathered around a shallow pool of black water. "They believed blindness brought them closer to the divine," he continued. "They didn't pray for sight. They gave it up willingly. All of them." Emily flipped to a photo of the temple ruins. Just broken stone walls now, half swallowed by moss and dirt. Sophie's name was there too, carved into a cracked wooden ledger from 1914. "Sophia Drexler, Initiate." "But that's impossible," Emily said. "She'd have to be over 100 years old." Evans said nothing. He didn't have to. That evening, Sophie spoke again. "I wasn't always blind," she said, her voice flat as stone. "I saw him before the dark came. Once. Just once." Emily sat beside her. "Who is he, Sophie?" "This man in the dark." Sophie tilted her head. "He doesn't have a name. He has faces, voices. He's in the corners, the shadows. He waits where eyes can't reach." She turned her face toward Emily, and for the first time, she looked afraid. "He's coming, because I broke the rule." "What rule?" Emily asked gently. "I let someone help me eat," Sophie whispered. "No one is supposed to touch me. It keeps him bound." Emily's stomach sank. "So, I broke something?" Sophie nodded. "You unbound the veil." That night the whispers returned, louder. Emily woke to the sound of laughter. Children's laughter. She bolted upright in bed. Outside the window, she saw movement. Figures darting between the trees. Small figures, running, giggling, then freezing unnaturally still. She reached for her phone. Dead. So was the landline. And the backup generator, installed specifically for emergencies, failed without warning. Evans banged on her door seconds later, flashlight in hand. We're not alone out here. Together, they searched the cabin and perimeter. The woods were too quiet now. Not a bird, not a breeze. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. When they returned inside, Sophie was gone. They found her standing in the basement of the ranger station. Barefoot, dress soaked in mud that hadn't been there before. She was tracing her hands across the concrete floor. He's almost through, she said. A long crack ran down the center of the basement. Deep and jagged, pulsing faintly like a vein beneath the earth. He's under the creek, Sophie murmured. He sleeps in the drowned chapel. The others brought him there. Emily's heart pounded. What others? Sophie turned toward her. The ones who can't move on. The ones who still wear the robes. By sunrise, Evans made the call. We need to go to Hollow Creek. End this at the source. Emily hesitated. You want to bring her back to the place where it started? We don't have a choice. She's connected to it. She's drawing him. Sophie stood silently by the door, her bear clutched tight. It's the only way, she said. The road to Hollow Creek was barely a road at all. Just a dirt trail winding through a forest thick with fog and silence. Trees leaned in unnaturally, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. The air smelled of rot and stone. After nearly 2 hours, they reached the ruins. What remained of the chapel was a broken skeleton, arches half swallowed by moss, pews overturned and warped with age. The creek that ran behind it was black, thick, and still. Sophie walked ahead of them, unafraid. When she reached the altar, she knelt, setting the bear down gently. He waits below, she said, in the root of the world. A deep, groaning sound echoed from beneath the earth. And then the bear moved. Not just a twitch. It stood, on its own. Its stitched seam burst open, and a single pale eye blinked from within. Emily stumbled back. Oh my God! Sophie didn't flinch. He remembers you now, she said to Emily. Me? Emily gasped. You touched me. You helped me eat. That act broke the vow. You opened a door. The air split with a screeching sound, like stone tearing. From beneath the chapel, the earth cracked open, and he began to rise. Not a man, not fully. A towering figure made of darkness and bone, faceless, yet watching with unseen eyes. The man in the dark. And he had come for Emily. Emily's scream was swallowed by the trees. The figure rising from the ground towered above the ruined chapel, a grotesque silhouette of shifting shadows and jagged bone. No face, no eyes, just presence. A crushing weight that folded the air around it, warping reality like a flame behind glass. The man in the dark had arrived. Sophie stood still as a statue, eyes blank, face toward the blackened sky. He's awake now. He remembers the world. Evans fired a round into the dark. It vanished into the void without a sound. No effect, he muttered. I don't think he's fully here yet. He's halfway between. Then how do we stop him? Emily shouted, backing away as the creature stepped forward, its long limbs scraping against the stone walls, causing deep rumbles beneath the ground. Sophie raised her hands slowly, palms outward. You don't. You offer. The wind howled around them as Sophie turned, her voice unnaturally calm. He was sealed away by sacrifice. Every generation. A vow made to bind him. That vow was broken when kindness replaced obedience. You touched me, fed me, treated me as a child. I thought you were a child, Emily choked. I am, but I'm also a key, a vessel. Something ancient lives in me. Emily stared at her, shaking her head. There has to be another way. Sophie walked toward the shadow thing. It paused as she approached, cocking its empty head. The twitch of curiosity almost human. Evans raised his rifle again. I don't think it's going to let her go. Sophie glanced back. He doesn't want me. He wants the bond. The broken vow. He wants you. Emily's stomach twisted. Me? You fed me. You cared. You made a choice. That act was pure. And purity calls to him. He devours it. Emily stepped back. I didn't mean to. That's why it worked, Sophie said, tears now streaming down her cheeks. He can't feed off malice. Only meaning, love, sacrifice. The earth rumbled louder. Evans looked to Emily. You have to leave. Now, I'll hold him off. But Sophie shook her head. No one holds him. Only endings do. Suddenly the world froze. The sky darkened. Not like night, but like the sun had blinked out. And then Emily was inside something. Not physically, but mentally, spiritually. The world around her vanished, replaced by an endless black sea, and standing on its glassy surface was Sophie, aged now, a woman with hollow eyes and a weary heart. You're not supposed to see this, she said. What is this place? Emily asked, her voice echoing. The in-between, the space where he waits, where I was made. Sophie walked slowly, her feet not leaving ripples. Each century, a child is chosen, blind, bound to the bear. The bear holds the eye, his eye. As long as no one touches us, the world is safe. Emily whispered. But I touched you. You helped me, Sophie corrected. And that changed everything. Behind them, a figure loomed, the same one from before, but now shifting shapes rapidly. A child. A woman. A beast. A man. Why me? Emily asked, her voice cracking. Because you were kind without cause, Sophie said. You didn't help to be thanked. Or rewarded. And that is rare. Emily blinked. Then how do I fix this? Sophie looked toward the figure. With something just as rare. Suddenly, Emily was back in her body. The chapel shuddered. Trees cracked and split. The creature was almost solid now, towering and terrible, its limbs dripping with black mist like oil in water. Sophie turned toward her, clutching the bear. The eye inside blinked. You can offer the vow, she said. You can seal him again. But the vow requires blood. Emily stepped closer, tears spilling down her cheeks. What happens to me? You become the new seal, Sophie whispered. You disappear. Forever. Not dead. Not gone. Just held. Emily looked at Evans. Tell people what happened here. He nodded, swallowing hard. You sure? No, she whispered. But she deserves to be free. Emily took Sophie's hands and kneeled. I vow to carry the burden. I vow to hold the dark. I vow to never be seen. The bear trembled violently. The eye inside turned white, blinding. Then, silence. The creature let out a soundless roar and began to unravel like a fabric lit on fire. Sophie screamed. Evans shouted. The air cracked open. And then Emily was gone. The aftermath was quiet. The chapel collapsed into itself. The eye inside the bear sealed shut. Sophie dropped it and walked barefoot into the woods, humming again. But this time, it was a child's song, light and hopeful. Evans returned to Lakeview with the story no one would believe. The file on Sophie Drexler was marked, closed. She was placed in foster care, her blindness returned, but her memories gone. Sometimes, she drew pictures of a woman with warm eyes, holding a spoon to her mouth, always smiling. In the end, kindness didn't just cost Emily her life. It transcended it. She became a part of something ancient, a quiet sentinel in the void, keeping the man in the dark bound by a vow no one else had the courage to make. And if you ever see a blind child sitting alone, clutching a bear with a stitched seam, be kind, but do not